Today we're going to be looking at Punky Color in their 3-in-1 color depositing shampoo and conditioner in the color Redilicious. So first thing you may notice is that my swatches are labeled 1 through 12. I do like to just remind everyone that those numbers are not synonymous with hair levels. I do different video clips and pictures and such near the end of the video, so the numbers just help us keep track of each swatch. Also, my swatches are not virgin hair, which means they've been chemically colored, treated, or bleached at some point in their existences. 1 is green, 2 is gray, 3 is like a mid-tone natural red, 4 is a soft black, and then 4 to 11 is a range that goes to platinum blonde, and then 12 is like a toned version of number 11. So based off the name alone, I would have to assume that this is meant to be used on wet hair, but I am really curious. I do want to see what it looks like over dry hair, so the top of each swatch, I'm going to apply this directly from the container onto the dry hair, but for the bottom half, I will wet the swatches first, and then I'll put this on top of the wet hair. Please keep in mind everyone's hair is different, which means everyone's hair will take color differently. Plus different screens and monitors and stuff can make colors look a little different, especially undertones. So please just use my video as a reference for how this could possibly turn out for you.
So tired from my thoughts that keep on swirling around. Medication used to help me breathe. Now it feels like it's abusing me. 'Cause all of my thoughts take the air out of me. And I can't disagree with the lies that I think you believe. Tell me, what do you believe? And if there was a way to explore my brain, by one way ticket on a monorail train.
So I am one of those sinful people that don't like to read instructions, but because this is a little bit different from what I'm used to, I decided to read the instructions, and I am kind of glad that I did. So it recommends leaving this on for 3 to 5 minutes, and it says 10 minutes or longer will deliver maximum color deposit. So I was going to do the 10 minutes, but then I read the warning section. It says the product contains direct dyes which will penetrate deeper into the hair. Do not allow to remain on your hair longer than 3 minutes if your hair is bleached, highlighted, relaxed, or tinted. And while I don't really care about deep staining on my swatches, I know that can be kind of important, you know, for your actual hair. And since the top part of the swatch with the direct dye over the dry hair will probably give us the maximum color anyways, I will just be doing the 5 minutes. So when the 5 minutes is up, I will rinse these out, let them dry, and we can come back and do some comparisons. Alright, once again, I would just like to remind everyone that my swatches are not virgin hair. Virgin hair tends to be less porous, which means oftentimes it will struggle to take and hold on to semi-permanent dye. That being said, this does really seem to be quite pigmented. I mean, it does say on the container that it is pretty pigmented, but I'm so surprised to see that I only did the diluted section for 5 minutes and it's quite red. So while I would still suggest doing a strand test if you have virgin hair, this does seem to be something that would give a pretty good result. Now, if your hair is a darker color, like it's a brown or even a dark blonde, I do just want to say it will not turn out like number 11. The undertone of your hair is still going to play a role, so keep that in mind. But I would say in pretty much all the swatches except maybe 4 and 5, this looks red. Sometimes over the darker swatches, you'll see more brown coming through with a tint of color, but even on number 5, I would still say 5 looks a little bit more brown than it looks red, but I see a lot of warm undertones on that. And then 6 just looks like a dark red. But let's start at the beginning. So number 1 was originally green. It looks to me like the green canceled out some of the more pinky undertones in this color. I would say this is a very true red, but over the green, it leans slightly more warm. So it almost has a slightly orangey look, and it is darker as well. 2 was the gray. And that one kind of had the opposite effect in the sense it actually looks a little bit more cooler, but they both turned out a little bit darker than it looks on the platinum blonde swatch. 3 was the natural red. Between the top and the bottom, I think the top just looks a little bit darker, which makes sense, it being the direct dye. But overall, it looks somewhere in between an unnatural and natural red. Like, it obviously is not a natural red, but it's not quite as bright as it is on number 11, so it almost has a slightly more natural look. But I definitely see a lot of red on there. 4 was the soft black. Now, soft black is one of those colors that sometimes can take and sometimes won't because it's not a pure jet black. And I do see an undertone difference. It does make it look actually almost a little bit more brown than it did before, than black. But it is very, very dark. So again, definitely do a strand test, and especially if your hair is virgin. I still wouldn't expect it to look super red, but it can change the undertone a tiny bit, possibly. We already talked about 5, but I will say the diluted section for all of these also turned out really, really well, especially considering I only left it on for 5 minutes. I would assume that if your hair was wet and you did this for the 10 minutes over darker hair, it would turn out like the top, because not only was the top directly put on like dry hair, but it also sat much longer. So I would say the top is probably the most intensity that you will get with this color. And honestly, I kind of recommend putting this over wet hair purely because it makes a little bit go a long way. And if you're gonna get such an intense color anyways, I think you'll use less product if you do this over wet hair. Just make sure to saturate everything so that it's not patchy. Oftentimes I will kind of lump 6, 7, and 3 together because they all have similar turnouts, which I would say same thing. Basically, as the swatches get lighter, the color also appears lighter as well. So over 6, it looks darker than it looks over 7, and then over 8, it looks lighter than it looks on 7. And that is the same with the wet section as well. Once we get to 9, I think that's as light as this color will get in terms of directly applying it, because 9, 10, and 11 all kind of sit in the same depth. So I'd say this red is kind of like a medium, where it's not dark enough to be called like a burgundy, but it is a little bit darker than like a rainbow red, I guess you would say. Obviously you can lighten this up by diluting or making your hair wet first before applying. And then 12 was the toned swatch. As usual, it kind of falls between 11 and 2, so it's a little bit darker and more cool tone than 11, but not quite as much as number 2. As for comparisons, I did want to start with Arctic Fox just because they're a little bit more well known. Now the brighter reds for Arctic Fox both fall either cool or warm. There's not really a in between. So I decided to compare this to Wrath because in terms of depth, like how dark the color is, it was a little bit more similar to that. So this is comparable to number 12, 11, 10, and 9. Arctic Fox's Poison runs a little bit lighter, so that's why I just thought this was a little bit more similar. But genuinely, the Punky color red is like right in between. And hopefully you can see next to the Wrath just how pinky the Wrath is. And then if I were to put Poison down, you would see just how orange the Poison is as well. But I just thought this would be a good comparison for anyone who already kind of knows what Wrath looks like and how this would compare to that. And then my most similar comparison is going to be Lunar Tides in the color True Lust. This is comparable to number 12, 11, 10, and comparable to number 9. I don't know if my camera will pick up on the differences because they're very, very minute. It looks to me like the Punky color leans just like a very tiny bit more warm, but just barely. And also a little bit more muted, but again, just barely. So the True Lust in comparison, I'm seeing a tiny bit of pink and a tiny bit more saturation, but again, it's hardly that different. And I think it's because of that tiny bit of saturation. It looks a little bit darker over the 12, 10, and 9 as well. So usually in this case, when I have colors that are quite similar, I like to invite people to talk about their experiences with both to help anybody that is trying to figure out which one they would rather do. All right, now I'd like to look at the before and after clips. Those, as well as anything past this point in the video, will all be done in natural lighting.
Tired from my thoughts that keep on swirling around. Medication used to help me breathe. Now it feels like it's abuse.
I hope my video helped. If you have a request, I do have a link below to a Google form you can fill out. Just remember, I only do brands that do not test on animals. Thank you so very, very much to my patrons, and thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in my next video.